Hello and welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio. I am Scott and I've got Shane here with me. And for those listening, you will not hear, well, actually, I have Paris here with me. If you're listening, you will not hear Shane. He's not with us at this episode, but we've got a special guest. Those of you guys watching, you've already seen him. We've got a guest today, Chris Turpin, who you probably remember from the Be Prepared Expos here in Utah. He's got another thing he's doing, which is we're going to let him explain it. It's kind of exciting change of pace, if you will, within the prepping industry. But it is Would You Survive? And it's a series of trainings. It looks like you're going all over the place. We'll let you kind of dig into that. But guys, if you're interested in this, stick around because we've got a promo code for you so that you can get a discount on the tickets. And it's fun. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a really good event I shouldn't say event, many events, because you're doing this all over the place. Let me back up from the beginning.
Okay.
Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Hey, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Tell us about Would You Survive? Because if I try to do it, I'm going to butcher it. And you're all over the place. So I want to know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what we can expect for our listeners to be able to get out of that.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about why this instead of Be Prepared Expo?
Well, last couple of years, and you guys have been there, we've done the Be Prepared Expo, which was fantastic. But honestly, we didn't get the amount of people out that we wanted to, right? And the whole idea is to get out there and help people to be prepared. So I decided that I would take the expo out on the road, and I called it the Would You Survive? It's the 10 G's of preparedness. It's sort of like this first one is an in-depth beginner course, right? That talks about the 10 G's of preparedness. So everything about preparedness, it starts with the G. To make it easier, everyone has 10 fingers, and you got 10 G's. We're doing it in all over the West right now in the spring. Minnesota, a bunch of places in Utah. Price. Where else are we? Oh, we're going to be in Tucson, and then starting to get in the fall, our first one's going to be in Colorado.
Nice. Yeah, I see now on your website. If you guys are watching on the screen, you'll see we're on his website. We've got coming up next is Ogden, Utah, followed by Brainerd, Minnesota, then Tucson, Arizona, Vernal, Utah, Price, Utah, St. George, Utah, and then Colorado. So the concept of it was what? You wanted to help people get better prepared because coming to an expo is great, but they don't spend enough time learning, or what caused this?
Because it is to get out there and have a little bit more one-on-one interaction, allow people to ask questions, show them some really cool products that are out there. Like one, I just found this yesterday. It's called Pure Tech, and they're walking sticks that also serve as water purifiers. So instead of having something hooked to your back, you just stick this in the water, pump it, and it's phenomenal. We're gonna present it this Saturday there at the Ogden show, but it's phenomenal. I'm all about multi-purpose tools and multi-purpose uses, right?
Yeah, consolidating and efficiency is important,
Yep.
especially when you're a prepper. You don't want to be able to have, if you only have so much room, so much weight you can carry. So the more things you can have doing, that are involved, that's a good idea. I mean, there's some pros and cons to that, but overall, generically, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah,
that's cool. So you're going to do these day-long activities, right? So every day. So it looks like they're on Saturdays and from 9 to 6.
On Saturdays from 9 to 6. The Utah ones will be having concealed carry class on Friday nights from 6 to 10. And that's free with your ticket.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Saturday session. Yeah.
Because you're a firearms, aren't you? A firearms
I
license?
have an FFL, but I'm also a licensed Utah concealed carry instructor. Yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds
Awesome.
good. What? Let's jump into. I was, when I first asked you, I was like, 10 G's. What the? Like, I'm trying to think. What could be a G? You got the 5G network, and you definitely don't want to have anything to do with that. So I was just like,
No.
what? I'm like, Chris, did you come up with a whole, like, so let's jump into, for a minute anyways. I like what you did though. I went down here and it shows the 5Gs, it shows the 10 Gs of preparedness a little further down on your website. And just one more time, guys, just the letter U, survive.com. And it's, we'll have a link in the description so that you can take a look at that. But if you scroll down to the bottom, it goes through the 10 Gs. So let's talk a little bit about them. I think they're great. I think it's cool. You've come up with some good, macro level letters, categories here. So go for it.
Well, the first one's guzzle, right? I'm all about water and the importance of water. And so we'll go in depth about water. One, you have to have water for sanitary reasons, for drinking, but you also have to be able to get water where you are, and you have to use it, for waste disposal. Water has just so many uses. So I put on guzzle. I was going to use another one because you need to have electrolytes, but I decided I'd probably get in trouble sometime down the road for using that word.
Gotcha. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
So guzzle's the first one, going through all the uses
And
of
that's all about drinking water,
water.
personal hygiene, cooking, washing, all the
Mhm.
important reasons that most people think that they only need water for drinking, and they don't remember that they need to
Oh,
rehydrate their foods.
it's for so much more. So much more. Water is vital, and having good, clean water that you can drink, right?
Oh yeah.
And filtrated.
And then
Then we go.
more water. I mean, you can only store so much. So you need to have ways to get more water, whether it's, some kind of distillery, whether it's some kind of way to pull it out of the atmosphere, or some kind of stick, this, like you mentioned earlier, this walking stick.
Right.
So that's all.
And you mentioned the atmosphere. Did Star Wars has come true, man? We can be atmosphere water farmers now. There's a cool place I don't remember the name, but a cool place out of California that has atmospheric water farming. You can buy a unit.
Well, you
That's
can
awesome.
actually build a unit too. It's basically a dehydration or dehumidifier technology,
Humidifier. Yeah.
and it's really cool. There's different ways you can do it, but I mean, we can go down this rabbit hole all night and just talk water. But let's go to the second G, garb.
Garb. Depending on where you live, right? You need to have in your 72-hour kit or your bug out bag, you need to have a summer and a winter one, right?
Mhm.
But you need to have those clothes, and a lot of people have coats and shoes and stuff like that. But one thing you have to remember is the extremities. You have to have really good socks, right? Well, the big problem in Vietnam was foot rot, right? And also in the trenches of World War I, right? If you can't walk, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So
That's a good.
going over those and staying warm, keeping warm, and we'll introduce people to some fantastic products. Doing the Be Prepared Expo the last couple of years, I've talked to over 800 different vendors, and there's tons just here in Utah that have
Mhm.
phenomenal products, and we'll be talking about those. The next
Awesome.
one, gazebo. So that's a shelter, right? It could be your home tent, RV, or whatever, but somewhere where you can feel and be safe. And that also leads into a secondary location, right? So if push comes to shove, it's an HTF, SHTF, right? you got to have a secondary location to go to that can provide you shelter, so you're not out in the elements, right?
Oh yeah, elements are the number one killer in the wild. So,
Oh yeah.
and you should worry more about cows than bears, people.
Right.
Cows are more dangerous. I just found out the most dangerous land animal that has the most deaths of humans. You know what that is?
No.
It's a hippopotamus.
Oh,
I'm
they were
so
just
glad I live in the United States because I don't have to deal with that. So those of you over there in Africa, you watch out. But yeah, it's funny because shelter is so under recognized in most people's preparedness plan. Or gazebo is so under recognized as a priority, and they don't think about it because they're like, "Oh, I've got my house." Well, what if you're not home?
right
Or what if your house is damaged? Like, think outside your
outside
current
the
box.
box. What are you going to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this next one. I think that's pretty creative, dude.
Yeah, I love Godzilla. The I was looking for a way to use that. No, my second to the youngest, Thomas, when he was little, he had these short little arms that would stick out, and he would just start yelling like Godzilla, with those short little arms, and
Mhm.
that was my nickname for him, was Godzilla. But yeah, fire, right? Without fire, none of us would be here. You've got it gives us warmth, shelter, protection, light. There's so many different uses, but people need to know what if it's raining outside? What do I use? How do I start a fire? What if I don't have anything? How do I start a fire to get warm, to get out of the elements? And people don't think about that. Well, I've got a big lighter. All right, fantastic. What happens when that big lighter runs out? What are you going to do? Items.
Oh yeah, you run out of fire, you run into a big problem real fast.
There's only so much raw chicken you can eat.
Yeah.
Pretty much zero. Okay, so let's jump to guns, which is one of your favorites and mine.
Yeah.
And if Shane were here, he'd go off on guns forever. But that's a pretty simple one because that's a term everyone's used to within the prepping and survival world. But tell us a little bit about that topic.
Well, guns, you need it to protect what you have, right? And I read a book about I listened to a book about the surge of Sarajevo, and they said within 30 days that all of the gangs had formed, right? And if you had food, but you didn't have anything to protect your food, you didn't have any food, right? And here in the United States, less than 3% of the people have enough food for 30 days. And in the good old days, before the 2020, right, before the great toilet paper debacle, grocery stores were stacked, and they had enough food for 3 days. Not anymore. You go in the grocery store now; it's not full. And so you need to, once people get hungry, that even on the commercials they tell you about getting hangry, right? Can you imagine everybody being hangry?
Yeah, that's not
there's a lot of people out there that are like, hey, you know what? You guys good food, that's great, but I'm going to get guns and I'm going to come take your food. Well, first of all, that's what you just said. However, I'm the kind of guy that's going to get food and guns. And if you come try to take my food, you're going to walk away with lead, not food.
A full belly of lead.
And I teach it, and we'll teach in there, you initially, and then guns are way addictive, right? Cocaine's right here, and guns are way off the chart, way up here, right? Guns are way addicting. But you need at least 5 guns, and we'll go over the 5 guns that everyone needs, but also plenty of ammo. People ask me, well, how much ammo do I need? Well, if you have 1,000 rounds of 22, let's say, right? That'll get you that's 3 rounds a day to about Thanksgiving, right? So if you're hunting for food, you better be a pretty good shot. If someone's trying to come to take your rabbit, you'll probably be out of ammo by noon. Yeah. So however much you think you need, that's what you need, right? And if you don't last the first day, you had plenty of ammo.
There you go.
You know?
Oh.
But you can also, like I said, you can also use it for bartering, right? And get things that you don't have, because no one's going to be 100% prepared. They're just not. But getting more prepared is the better. Be an ant, not a grasshopper.
I like that. So then that goes to generator, and I'm noticing there's a little bit of a trend in these. You're kind of following the survival rule of threes. Like, you can only survive 3 days without water, right? Food's not even a thing to think about yet, and I'm assuming that's going to be later down the line. But this does go in a pretty good priority line of what you should be thinking about in preparedness. Was that intentional?
Since you're asking, yes.
It works out. All right, let's jump into generator.
I learned that from Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah. If it's positive, agree to it. If it makes you look better, yes, it was on purpose.
That was right. It was on purpose.
So yeah, I personally just got my and here's something I think about generators too, is like, go get one for sure, but then practice using it. Like, I haven't practiced using mine as often as I should. I did when I first bought it, I started it all up. I learned it all the buttons were, but I haven't put it to, that was several months ago. My memory is maybe I need to start taking some supplements, but my memory is not what it used to. I should probably practice with my generator more often than I do, so that I can be, keep that skill fresh. Cause I think it's a diminishing skill if you're not using it regularly.
Right. And I think generators to begin with, especially ones if you have a triple source generator or something like that, that's why you're at home, right? Where you can use it. And, they're even talking about this year rolling blackouts for the next 2 years. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but.
Well, in California, I've heard of that, but I didn't hear about it anywhere else.
But having a big generator at home, but if you're in a SHTF situation, right, you don't want to be running a generator and attracting attention. But if the power goes out, you have a short-term time where you don't have any power, you don't want things to spoil that you've saved in your freezer or the food that you have in your refrigerator. So that's a good time to use a generator in your home that uses gas or propane or something like that. When it comes to generators, I'm a big proponent of reusable resources, renewable resources. So, like a bigger generator that offers you solar recharging is a big one when you're outside of your home.
Like ideal.
So
cool. Well, I love the next one you got in here. God, that's definitely. I think you're right, because one of the things you and I talked a couple days ago, and we went through the 10 Gs, and you hit the nail on the head that most people actually end up giving up, and that's why they don't survive, is because their mental fortitude wasn't strong enough, their faith wasn't strong enough, they lost hope. And when you lose hope and you don't have something to keep you mentally strong, you're going to give up before your mind. If your mind gives up before your body, you're done for.
You're done. Yeah.
And so your mind can keep your body going, but your body doesn't always keep your mind going. And so that's why I think God and family is essential, as that faith, hope, and that mental health is critical. Tell me what, add to that.
Yeah, that's way important. And where I saw that, and I'm a man of faith, and that's really important. But what really struck me was, have you ever watched the show Alone, where they take the professional, these are professionals, right? Not the Australian one where they have school teachers, but the real one, where they take professional survivalists and they stick them out in the wild by themselves, and they get to choose 10 items to take with them. And I have noticed between about day 55 to day 65, they just lose it mentally. right? They may have family at home or a reason, which is really good. Don't get me wrong. Family is a fantastic anchor. But when you're in those moments of despair and things are looking bleak, you have to have something bigger than all that to hold on to, right? So that you don't, like you were saying, Paris, so that you don't lose it mentally and just decide to give up. And that's kind of the glue that's going to hold everything else together, because none of us want this to happen, but a lot of us are feeling that sooner or later something catastrophic is going to happen, some sort of an SHTF, with all these millions of people that are permanent tourists coming from down south, right? Something will happen, and you want to be mentally strong. Very, very important. Mentally strong. Mentally strong.
Well,
Yeah.
it's cool that we're bringing this up, because like we talk about a loan, and that's 58, 65 days, right? But I had the interesting opportunity to meet Salvador Alvarenga, and he is the focal point of a book called 438 Days. He and his friend went on a fishing trip, supposed to be like weekend long, and he was on the ocean for 438 days. At one point, I think it was like 60 days in, his friend just gave up and died.
Wow.
He's just like, I'm done. And he attributes the reason why he survived was because of his faith in God. Because he believed in God, he had a reason to go on. And I thought that was one of the most powerful things towards understanding our mental health. Our spiritual health is just as important.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And it can increase our mental fortitude. I don't even know how many times over. And so that's, I think, a key thing that a lot of people forget about. Like, talk about God, focus on God, focus on the purpose behind why you're doing all these things. You're not prepping just to survive the apocalypse, potentially, right? You're prepping to survive the daily disasters, but you're doing it because you have a greater hope for the future than less of a hope.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, very, very powerful. So we'll talk about that. Some people might not like it, but yeah, that's the way it is. They got 2 months and then they're done. So
yeah, we'll get rid of the people who don't believe in God real quick after if they give up.
Right.
Or we'll convert a bunch of them, because they'll be like, "How are you guys surviving? Come on over, we'll show you."
Yeah, we're not opposed to that either.
How are you so happy when there's no food anywhere? No, that let me show you. Well, so then the next G is gold.
Right.
And for some people, that's their God. But let's talk about gold and what you see this being, because obviously, if there's an economic disaster, that's going to equate differently. But go over gold real quick. Give us a synopsis.
Well, I throw in gold in there along with bartering items too, but gold has always been money, right? And so I share this with some people. I lived through the hyperinflation in Argentina, where within a period of 22 months, the exchange rate went from 3 to 1 to 10,000 to the 1, right? And there was a period of about 6-8 months where if you didn't have money in the morning, you definitely couldn't buy it in the afternoon, because the price had already gone up, and then you couldn't buy it in the evening because the money was worthless, right? And gold has that, and the fungibility and being able to use it as a currency, like people used all the way up until 1972, right? Gold and silver were used as money, and so we teach people that. I'm a big proponent of Goldbacks, because that allows you to have as small as 1,000th of an ounce of gold, worth just over $4, that you can spend to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it always has value because it's backed by gold. It's made by gold. It's not backed by gold.
Yeah, it's literally gold.
Literally gold. But there's lots of other things you can use for barter. So we cover a lot of, the gold and a lot of bartering in there. Get things. I had a good friend of mine. His father-in-law was big up in his church. They call him a patriarch, right? And he invested all of his money in vices. He said vices will never go away. Everyone will always have vices. So I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't drink coffee. But in my emergency preparedness, do I have alcohol? I sure do. Do I have coffee? I have a lot of coffee. I have other things like prophylactics, right? Important stuff that you can trade. Cigarettes, that's been money in prisons forever, right? So you have those things that you can trade. But then another thing, ammunition. But it sounds crazy, but what about nails, right? Or things that are no longer available that people can get, but they got used to the convenience of. Another thing is female hygiene products, big bartering items, right?
Good.
And those store really well. Those things, like all these things we've talked about, can store really well.
Yeah.
So awesome. Okay, so then let's jump into gauze.
Gauze,
We're at our ninth
way
G.
important. First aid, medicine. If you get a cut, if it gets infected, you're going to die, unfortunately, right? Because you won't be able to go out and get those things. There's fantastic companies out there now that allow you to get your medicines, and you're local in Utah, right? You're able to get your medicine and your prescriptions and antibiotics to last up for a whole year, which if you can, I would do that. You guys,
you're talking about Jace Medical and other
Jace
places like
Medical,
that.
right? Jace Medical, that's who I'm talking about. You bet. Fantastic. But you should take some classes. I'm not first aid certified or anything, but I know people who are and who are trauma certified and certified. And I'll be giving those out in the class where people can get a hold of them and have a class and learn how to do basic first aid. Or maybe, what do you do if someone has a severe laceration or heaven forbid, a gunshot wound? Or what if they just step on a rusty nail?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
That's not going to be a fun one. It's going to
No.
be the smaller wounds that are the bigger problems, I think, going into the future.
Yeah.
Right.
First aid is critical. You cannot, in my opinion, you cannot have a survival mentality without having a significant, at least a beginner level skill set in first aid, and then have somebody in your team that has a little bit more, mid-level. You may not need to have a experts, but shoot, if you can get somebody who's good, a nurse or some doctor or somebody, ER nurse, somebody like that, that's going to be in your team, in your community, you want to make sure to keep them alive as long as possible, because
That's right.
They're going to help
That's
keep,
right.
keep the rest of you alive.
Yeah, that's for
All
sure.
right. Well, last but not least,
Grub, right?
I love it.
So I'm big, grubs, food, way important. And I'm a big proponent of the 4-3-2-1 breakdown. 40% of your food should be long-term, 30% it should be food that you eat on a regular basis. 20% of your food and supplies should be non-perishable items. And then 10% is very dense emergency. The world's come crashing down. I got to get out of here. Stuff. High caloric intakes.
Gotcha.
That you can use.
That's kind of a cool breakdown.
And you run. The average person's going to need about 1 million calories a year. Is what they're going to need. And that's about 2,750 calories a day. Because if you're out and about, you're going to be using more calories. If you're up at home and watching stuff, it's going to be less. But you need to divide that up, as we talked in the beginning, with gazebo. You've got to have a secondary location where you can have some of this stuff stashed and you can get to it. if you
It's
need
funny
to.
because a lot of times with food storage, people think they'll go use these online calculators and they think, okay, I'm good, and they'll calculate it based off of, and this is the scariest thing. Like a lot of the old food storage calculators are based off of the Auschwitz survival rations.
Right.
And those of you who haven't heard of Auschwitz, go look into your history in Germany, why we went to war, and understand. Just Google Auschwitz and understand the people who survived Auschwitz, the concentration camp, were living on the absolute least amount calorically to survive.
Just right.
Now,
Yeah.
if you want to thrive through disaster, you're going to need at least 2,700 plus calories a day. Just remember, you're splitting wood,
You know,
you're
all
fixing
kinds of
things,
different
you're
things.
very, very active in a survival
Yeah.
scenario. So, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things people forget to do is really check, okay, how much do I really need? Thinking of it as 1,000,000 calories a year, that's a big number, but when you break it down daily, it's not that much.
It's not that much, right? And we just try to get people going, first 30 days, go to 6 months, go to a year, and then go to a year plus, whatever you feel, wherever you feel you need to be, right? And
Yep.
and obviously we're on Prepper Talk Radio, and people know that we're practical preppers, right? But the number one thing is when you're with preparing is don't share it with everybody. No one needs to know. Only the
Yeah.
people who are going to take advantage of it and participate in your preparation need to know, right? Because you don't know, how many grasshoppers there are in your local area or your local congregation or at work or whatever, or grasshoppers who have moved in from the West Coast, won't mention any names, that think, hey, I'm just going to go over to Mr. Ant's house and take whatever he has. That's what I heard. I heard Mr. Ant has all the stuff. And it's just not going to be that way. And that leads down to difficult decisions. We won't go into that now. But that comes to making hard decisions, right? If you're in an SHTF situation.
Well, we just had an episode where we did, let's see,
Basically the dangers of your neighbors, right?
Yeah, it was episode 345. In SHTF, your neighbor may be your biggest threat. So we did have a conversation about that just recently. So go check out that episode 345.
Yeah, that would be good.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you for being on today. I want to remind everybody, go check out wouldyousurvive.com. That's not YOU for you. It's the letter U, wouldyousurvive.com. I'm not going to tell you the first event because by the time this goes live, we'll have missed it. But Saturday, March 2nd, you guys are going to be in Brainerd, Minnesota.
Brainerd, Minnesota. Yeah.
Following that, you're going to be in Tucson on Saturday, March 16th. Guys, go to wouldyousurvive.com, check it out. Use the code PrepperTalk, one word, when you get to checkout, and that'll get you another discount. I think it's like $15. That'll save you at checkout. And right now, there are early bird discounts that are already applied. So you get even more of a savings.
That's right.
So make sure you check that out, guys. Thank you again, Chris, for being here.
You bet. Thank you much. I appreciate it, guys. Hey, and Scott, just, if you're in an area where we haven't been going, feel free to give me a call, send me an email. We could set up a class for your organization or for your area. We can make that happen.
And all of his details are on his website. So make sure you connect through wouldyousurvive.com to get a hold of Chris. Chris, thanks for being on, guys. Thanks for listening and trying to get yourself better prepared. It's a step-by-step process. No one goes from 0 to 60 in a day. Right? You can't go from 0 to 100% prepped in one day, even if you're a billionaire. Like the process is bigger than that. And a lot of it comes down to learning. Learning is the most important thing you can do for your preparedness. So, Chris, we appreciate you doing this. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, guys.
Guys, we'll catch you on the next episode. And in the meantime, stay focused, stay ready-minded, and keep that head on a swivel.
All right,
guys.
See ya.